All right, now I'm almost finished with my black and white logo. I'm just making the final touches here. And what's nice about building these within Illustrator is I can use the small selection tool, take any one of these shapes, and alter them individually. I can even use the large selection tool and kind of mess with them and transform them. Oh, here's a nice trick. So remember, these are white fill shapes that I'm using. And when I drew this, it combined them, so they're actually one shape that's just twisted. So how do I separate those? Well, that's where the eraser tool comes in. And the eraser is kind of like the pencil in that if you double click, you can set the size. But the smallest size is 1 point, which isn't much. But the eraser is a great tool for separating between paths in order to make them separate paths, which is what I want here. And the eraser can kind of shave away from your design if you need to fine tune it. Same thing here. These look like they're connected, so I want to use that eraser to divide them so I can work with them individually. Now that they're divided, I can just go to the pencil tool, hold down Command to select a certain path, and now I can redraw their edges. And if I have it more towards smooth here, it will smooth them out, as I do them. You end up using Command Z a lot in Illustrator because it's so precise about where you click that until you get used to that, you make a lot of mistakes. Or even when you're used to it, you make a lot of mistakes. Now, I wouldn't suggest using the pencil tool so much if we didn't have the tablet and the stylus. That is a big help, having those tools. Remember, you have to start through an anchor point and end through an anchor point in order to change it. Okay, now let's get kind of the big view. I can use the large selection tool and then shrink this down if I want. Hold down Shift if I want to keep its proportions. Then I can use my arrows, because this isn't cut out. Remember, this is just a floating white shape on top to get it right where I want it. Now, cutting out silhouettes is an American folk art that had its origins in the South. Just like cutting out paper is a Mexican folk art. And so San Antonio sees a lot of kind of cut paper designs and stencils and silhouettes. And this is just how you do that kind of work digitally. And the great advantage of it is you can tell your scissors through your pencil tool to be more accurate to the marks you make or to smooth it out automatically. And you can add paper instead of just taking it away, which is really nice. Remember, to do this by hand before the computer, you had to paint your black forms on basically a graphic clay board, which is expensive. It's like a really smoothed out piece of masonite with a lot of plaster and glue built up on top to give you a smooth surface. And then you would use graphic paints, like Pelican graphic paints, and you would paint your black shape, and then you would paint your white shape, and you'd go back and forth, refining and refining the shapes. And that's exactly what I'm able to do here without having to use super expensive brushes. When I was doing letter form design, we were required to buy Sable Series 7 Winsor Newton brushes, and they're each about $80 for just tiny brushes, and you have to clean them so carefully because you need them to be so precise. Here I can just let the tool be that precision for me. and always undo it if I'm unhappy. So for those of you skeptical about Illustrator, it has its place, and there's no tool that does these things better. And unlike Photoshop, where it's a really competitive marketplace for raster graphic imaging tools, there aren't a whole lot of vector graphic imaging tools, because it's a very particular professional need that it fills. Okay, I think I'm almost there, almost ready to finish off my black and white logo. Black on white, not black and white. So why am I having trouble with this one? Because it's not a closed path. So the first thing I want to do is close that path. And then I should be able to redraw it. Because vectors use up very little memory, they're based on rules. And you have to kind of understand the rules in order to make use of them. Remember, each anchor can either be curved or straight. All right, now the last thing I'm debating is whether I want this little lip of white to be a little bit more jagged, or if I want to keep it clean. And I'm not sure of that. So what I'll do is I will select that layer and I will duplicate it. But I can't just hit Command J. Command J doesn't do anything in Illustrator that's good. Instead, I want to say Edit Copy. Then I'm going to lock that layer, turn it off, make a new layer underneath, and say Edit Paste in Place. Okay. And then I also need to copy that kind of E shape, which is right here. So I say Edit Copy, and then I can lock it, I can turn it off, go back to layer 6, and I say Edit Paste in Place. So now I have basically a second copy of this logo shape. My whites are still on top. And now I can play with, maybe on a new layer, a few different options. The first option is I can add a new white shape here. It has a little texture. Remember, I have my pencil set to a slightly more accurate now. Close the path, fill it in with white. Then I can trim it. This needs to work to scale, so I can't have anything too precise or too skinny if I expect it to be able to be versatile as a logo. So that looks pretty good. So that's one option I have, and I can turn that on, off and on, see if I think that's helpful. The other option, this is why I made the copy, is I can redraw the bottom of this cutout and give it a little texture just on the bottom edge, like that. And that might be the way to go. Let's see how I like that. Okay. Yeah, and I think that's the winner. All right, and then it makes me think, well, maybe this is a little thick up here. I want this to be still just as smooth, but not as thick. So what I'm going to do is set my pencil to very smooth. And so as I redraw it, I'm expecting it to really smooth it out for me, even though I'm slimming it. That way it's really not going to add more anchor points. So you're making lots of little decisions. Now, I see that and I like it. So what I can do is turn on or select both these layers. Everything else is locked, and I say Edit Copy. And then I can say just on a new layer, lock the others, it's all about design. edit paste in front. Let's see, did it do what I wanted? I'm not sure. Let's try paste in place. Paste in front. Okay, there it is. So it's now a light blue one. And I'm going to move this over to the side. So that's the one I think I like best. And now I'll turn on some of the other alternatives. And this is where logo design becomes a major pain. Trying to determine between close similarities. Like which one's better, this one or this one? And I'm going to say this one. So that's the one I'm going to go for. So I'm going to hide every other layer that I don't need. If I want to, I can try this white in there. Let's see, but I'm pretty sure I don't want it. I can even try shrinking it down a little bit. Whoops. Remember, if you get stuck selecting things you don't want to select, you just use the lock tool. Yeah, I don't think that's helpful. So I'm going to turn all those off, lock all those layers. I haven't deleted them, I just turned them off. Put this central, this is what I want. I make sure I save this as an EPS. So this is going to be my Carl assignment 6 black on white logo. But not as an AI file. Though I guess that's a good start. Save it first as an AI file. But more importantly, to the desktop as an EPS file. And that will be able to move it into Photoshop. You want it transparent, you don't want it opaque. You just keep all the default settings. Right, that's my finished black and white logo. Now how do I submit that? I can minimize Illustrator, and now I'm going to open up Photoshop because only raster files can go online. And unless you have a laser printer, only raster files can be printed really well. So I want to control the rasterization of my vector. So I do that by opening up Photoshop, and for the first time in a long time, we're going to open up a new file in Photoshop, not just open something existing. So I say File New, and I'm going to call this Carl Assignment 6 Black on White Logo. And I'm going to make it print resolution. So I would recommend 8 by 10 inches. You can decide whether it's vertical or horizontal based on your logo design, by 350 pixels per inch in RGB color mode. Even though it's a black logo, you'll see why. Then I say OK. And now I simply have a pixel grid of white, a white background. That's 350 pixels per inch, 8 by 10. Now, because I saved my EPS, my finished EPS onto my desktop, just like we did when we were compositing, I'm going to drag that icon from the desktop and drop it onto my page, and then hold down Shift and Option maybe, and make it as big on the paper as I think would look good. If this is the outside matte, I position it, then hit Return. And what I'm doing is I'm bringing it in as a smart object. So I'm not able to edit it. But I made a mistake, didn't I? Because if this background, let me make a duplicate of the background, if I fill it in with gray instead of white, I forgot to do Pathfinder on my white shapes. So I need to go back and do that. And I can just open that up right from the EPS file, or I can go to the AI file that's already open. All right, so how do I do that? Well, it's all in this one layer now. I just select it all, and I go to Pathfinder, and I hit Exclude, and then I fill it all in with black.